All right, welcome back. Hopefully you were able to join us for our virtual meetup and you're using this as a way to look back and talk more about the figures of speech. But if not, welcome. So today we're going to start off with this welcoming ritual. You're going to choose one phrase and explain what it means. So if you're doing this for the first time, I want you to pause this video in just a moment, and you're going to explain to a brother, a sister, or family member or friend what this phrase means. So you have 5 options. Option 1 is lend an ear. Option 2, that touched my heart. 3, bad egg. 4, couch potato. Or 5, pay an arm and a leg. So choose one phrase and talk about what you think it means. All right, so to lend an ear, that doesn't mean you're actually giving someone your actual physical ear. It means to be a good listener, okay, to listen to someone. Number 2, that touched my heart. We're not actually touching someone's heart, right? That touched my heart means it meant a lot, or that really made me feel good inside. Number 3, bad egg. When someone's a bad egg, that means that they are not good, okay? They're not good news. So they're not actually a bad egg. Couch potato, you guys have probably heard this one. A couch potato, I know my mom sometimes said it to me, is when you are lazy, right? You lay around and do nothing. You're not actually a potato on a couch. And then last but not least, pay an arm and a leg. That means something is expensive, right? You're not actually paying with one of your arms and one of your legs. So these are figures of speech, okay? And we're going to talk more about figures of speech today. So today, again, we're talking about figurative language. Let's see if it lets me. We're going to exit this really quick so it lets me. Okay, we don't want to draw. All right, thank you for bearing with me. So we're talking about figurative language. All right, so first we're going to start off by talking about what is the difference between literal and figurative language. So literal language is something that you say that's exactly what you mean, okay? So you don't exaggerate, you don't compare, you don't understate the situation, you're not sarcastic, right? You're saying exactly what you mean. I have a dog. Okay, that's literal language. I actually have a dog. But when we're talking about figurative language, we're talking about not saying exactly what you mean. You're either comparing, exaggerating, maybe being sarcastic. So you'll use similes, metaphors, hyperboles, and other figures of speech. And this makes your writing more exciting, okay? And maybe even the way you talk more exciting. So we're going to identify if these sentences are literal or figurative. So is it exactly what someone means, or are they just giving you a figure of speech? All right, so number 1, the snow was coming down by the bucketfuls. So is that literal or figurative? Is it actually coming down by the bucketfuls? That would be figurative. Number 2, Mary is always dressed neatly. Is that figurative or literal? Does she actually dress neatly? That would be literal, okay? You can dress neat. Number 3, Native Americans believed that the sun was a god. Figurative or literal? Now remember, we're questioning the sentence. Is this what actually happened? Okay, is this what's actually happening? This is what actually happened, so it's going to be literal. Number 4, these bags are so heavy, my arms are falling off. Okay, is that actually what's happening? No, it's figurative. And number 5, Miss Brown sometimes gives us too much homework. Is that literal or figurative? I combined them. It is literal, okay? So there's nothing that they're comparing it to, okay? So we can say that that is literal. That could actually happen. Let's look at this for a second. This little cartoon says, actually, we were looking for someone who could think outside the box. So thinking outside of the box is a figure of speech. But this is a Jack in the Box, so they can't hire him because he's in the box. So, ha ha ha. All right. So here we're thinking about the 7 types of figurative language. And when we think about that, you might wonder what this picture is about. Let's look. Simile, hyperbole, alliteration, metaphor, personification, onomatopoeia, and oxymoron. So when we think about this, we're going to use shampoo, okay? That's what's going to help us remember the 7 types of figurative language. Simile, hyperbole, alliteration, metaphor, personification, onomatopoeia, and oxymoron. So let's start with a simile. A simile is comparing 2 unlike things, so they're not alike, but we're comparing them using like or as. Her eyes were like stars. Okay, so eyes and stars are not alike, but we're comparing them using the word like. Susan is as gentle as a kitten. So a person and a kitten are not the same thing, but we are comparing them using as. But we got to be careful. I don't think it shows this, but we do need to be careful, okay? You are not using a simile every time you say like, okay? I like my dog, okay? I like my dog. That is not a simile because I'm not comparing it to anything. So make sure you're careful with that. Hyperbole is an exaggeration, so it's very dramatic and no one could ever believe it, okay? So you're emphasizing a point by saying it very exaggerated. This bag weighs a ton, okay? And so a ton is a measurement, if you didn't know that. It's 2,000 pounds, okay, is a ton. So that bag does not actually weigh a ton. I've told you 1,000,000 times to clean up your room. Have you heard that before? The mom is not actually saying it 1,000,000 times, right? That's a little dramatic. It's an exaggeration, but it's to get a point across. So that's a hyperbole. Alliteration. It's the repeating of the same letter or sound. It's normally consonants, okay? So it actually is always consonants. So when we think of alliteration, you can think of alliteration, okay? So we're thinking about littering. We're littering our sentences So if you don't know what littering is, that's to drop lots of trash on the ground. Okay, so we're going to litter our sentences with a consonant, a letter. So for example, Miss Warren was worried when Wendy was waiting. What did we litter this sentence with? W's, right? That's our alliteration. Rubber baby buggy bumpers. What is this sentence littered with? B's, right? One more. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Okay? And that one is littered with P's. So here's some alliteration that we could find in poetry. A flea and a fly and a flew were imprisoned, so what could they do? Said the fly, let us flee. Let us fly, said the flea. So they flew through a flaw in the flue. That's a lot, right? Lots of FL sounds, okay? So that's more than one consonant, FL, not just an F. All right, now we are at a metaphor. So this is comparing two unlike things without using like or as, okay? So it's just calling one thing another thing. So we're not going to say her eyes were like stars. We would say her eyes are stars, okay? That would be a metaphor if we're just saying it is this way. He's a lion when he fights. Okay, so he's not actually a lion, but we're comparing him to a lion, and we're not using like or as. Her eyes were sparkling emeralds. My love is a red, red rose. All right, next is personification. All right, do you see a word that you know in that? Hopefully you said person, okay? So personification is giving human qualities, okay? It's giving human characteristics or qualities to something that is not a human, okay? So let's look at one. The angry floodwaters slapped the house. So the floodwaters couldn't actually be angry because they're not human, but we're saying that they're angry. So that's personification. The sun smiled down on us. Sun can't smile, only humans can. So we're giving it, we're personifying it, giving it personification. Onomatopoeia. So that one's a big word, and it's got lots of vowels in it. And you can remember onomatopoeia is a word that we use to describe a sound, okay? So boom, smack, crack, or ow, ooh, those sounds, okay, that we use to describe, or those words that we use to describe sounds are onomatopoeia. So if you think of that weird sounding word, onomatopoeia, okay, it's to describe a sound. So let's look at this. Buzz. Okay, that's to describe the sound that a bee or a bug would make. Pow, right? Tweet, tweet. Zoom. Hiss. Okay, so you can hear the sound that it makes in the word. Oxymoron. Okay, so an oxymoron is a contradiction. It's actually the opposite of the terms used. So we've got a jumbo shrimp. Okay, so those are two very different things that are combined to tell us something. Jumbo shrimp. It's not actually jumbo because it's still a shrimp, right? Act naturally. Ooh, uh-oh. Let's get back to where we were. There we go. Adult child. Okay, you can't be both an adult and a child. That's why it's an oxymoron. They're opposites. Climb down. Okay, because you're supposed to climb up. Baby grand. Okay, it's a baby grand piano. Those are opposites. All right, so now you are going to help us decide. Is this personification, simile, metaphor, oxymoron, hyperbole, alliteration, or onomatopoeia? The streetcars are like frosted cakes covered with snowflakes. All right. So what is it? What word do we need to look at to help us decide? Hopefully you said like. Okay. That is an example of a simile. We're comparing the streetcars to frosted cakes covered with snowflakes. Okay. Using the word like. Number 2, the west wind dances down the road. Okay, so this time we're talking about the wind dancing. And we know the wind can't actually do that. But dancing is something a person could do. So which one of these is it? It is personification. Number 3, a train is a dragon that roars through the dark. Okay, so we're comparing two unlike things. A train is a dragon. Okay, so that would be a metaphor. You could even go into the second part of that, right? That roars through the dark. Number 4, the band played to a small crowd at the concert. The band played to a small crowd at the concert. This one's a little bit trickier. Look at small crowd. Okay? Those things are opposite, right? When we think of a crowd, that's a big gathering of people. So it's saying a small crowd, which would be an oxymoron. She's as tiny as a mouse. Okay, so it's comparing, like you probably noticed, using what? As, so it's a simile. It could also be, we could say it's a hyperbole, right? It's an extreme exaggeration. Her blonde hair shined like the sun. Probably shone like the sun. This would be a simile because we're comparing using like. Suzanne suddenly stretched slowly. You could probably even tell by the way I read that. Suzanne suddenly stretched slowly. Gets me tongue-tied every time. This one is an alliteration. What are we littering the sentence with? S's, right? Okay, so let's see if we got these right. That was a simile. Personification. Metaphor. Oxymoron. That's a simile. Simile and alliteration. So don't forget to shampoo, simile. Remember the next one, hyperbole. Think of the next one, A. Alliteration, M. Metaphor, P, personification. O, oxymoron. And O, onomatopoeia. Always be the baby with the shampoo. All right, last thing for today. We are going to talk about this poem, and it's a poem by Robert Frost. It's called The Road Not Taken. Okay, so we're going to go line by line and just kind of decide if we see any figurative language. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood. We'll go a few more lines. And sorry I could not travel both, and be one traveler long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that, the passing there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay, in leaves no step had trodden by black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Okay? So he's talking about traveling in the woods, right? And he's talking about these two paths. And so what we can see is that these two paths are compared a lot, okay? And so let's look at the first stanza, okay? So that first little thing that looks like a paragraph. The two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be one traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could see, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Okay? So first, let's look at yellow wood. In a yellow wood. Okay, so that's a comparison. It's not using like or as. What else? It says, and be one traveler long I stood. So he's saying I could not travel both and be one traveler. Okay, so I want you to take a moment and pause the video to look over this and see if you can spot any alliteration, any metaphors, any comparing using like or as. Okay, and then we'll just talk about a few. Okay. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Will it actually be ages and ages? No, so that would be an extreme exaggeration, also known as a hyperbole. Okay. Then took the other as just as fair. As just as fair would be a simile, okay? So there's just two that we're going to talk about right now. And I'm going to give you guys some time to go and look at our assignment today. We are completing the assignment on the story that we read 2 days ago, okay? And what you're going to do is you're going to try to find some of this figurative language in the story that we read, okay? So I'm going to go and post the assignment, but also the reading so you can look back at it, okay? And then you are going to write down what the figurative language is. Okay, I hope you guys have a great day.